Hello, Garland Nixon here. And so it looks like Kamala Harris is going to be most likely the nominee. Let's talk. Good morning. Hold on 1 second. Garland Nixon here. Got to look at something real quick. Just making sure nobody's sent me any important messages this morning before I get going. And I have to get on top of. I got lots of interviews to do today for obvious reasons, right? All right. Kamala Harris looks like she will be the nominee. Biden did what was the obvious step down. We kind of saw that coming. If you've been following me, if you've been reading, I'll give you the brief once over. Or reading my Substack, my political superfoods Substack, the last article I wrote, I argued the following. The Democrats long knew they were going to get rid of Biden. And they had to set the table first so that they could choose the nominee. And the way they did it was they simply rigged the primaries. In the primaries, they, if you remember, they moved South Carolina to #1 because they thought that would help Biden the most. They then said, we're not going to count New Hampshire. We're not going to count that. They did all this stuff. Then they had a number of states that wouldn't have anybody. Dean Phillips was running, RFK Jr. was running, Marianne Williamson was running. They had a number of states. They would not allow anyone on the ballot but Biden. I mean, they just straight out said, yeah, we know there's 3 other people running, but we're not going to give the voters the opportunity to run for them. We ain't putting their name on a ballot. So what you had was a clear setup, a clearly rigged primary to give it to Biden. But why? Why? They could have rigged it other way. Why'd they rig it like that? Because they knew they were going to get rid of Biden. Oops, let me get rid of some of this headroom. They knew they were going to get rid of Biden. They knew at some point they had to get rid of Biden. I mean, let's face it. 2019, I don't know if you recall, Julian Castro very briefly ran for president, and he brought up Biden's cognitive decline in 2019. And they, quickly ushered him out of the room. It was, the worst kept secret in DC. So everybody knew about, his cognitive decline. The alternative media was like making jokes and running clips about it for years, literally years. So the insiders, of course, knew what they dealt with him every day. So what they did was they set it up so that there would be no second place challenger. So that once they did get rid of him, it would be easy to replace him with whoever they wanted, that the ruling elite, factions of the ruling elite could fight it out, and whichever faction won would get their nominee. That's where we are now. So that's why they set up a nice early debate, right? Nobody's ever seen a debate in June. Why would you set up a debate, this early? They set up an early debate so that Biden could display his ineptitude, that he could display his cognitive decline, and then there would become an uproar. Oh no, he's got to go, like something new. The whole thing was set up and staged, and then they could argue back and forth about whether he should go or couldn't go. And let me add this: I even think, as oddly as this is, it's counterintuitive, but I think this is the way it is. A lot of people screamed and yelled when Biden came out and flopped and laid an egg. They said, just a few weeks ago, everybody in the mainstream media was writing articles that said there's nothing wrong with Joe Biden. He's fine. He's perfect. He's sharp as a tack, blah, blah, blah. And now look at him, right? If you think of it in a paradoxical way, that was part of the game. Because if you write articles, he's great, he's sharp as a tack, he's wonderful, right? You want to up the expectations for him. You want everybody to say he's great, he's perfect. Doesn't that kind of put an exclamation mark on his terrible showing? So when you say he's great, he's sharp as a tack, he's wonderful, all of these people that are watching are now, you got 2 groups. You got one group who supports Joe Biden, who reads it and buys into it and says, yeah, exactly. He's great. He's wonderful. There's nothing wrong with him. He has a stutter, a cold. He's in great shape. You watch. He'll show you. So they have an expectation that he's going to do well. And he's going to flop. And when he flops, they're going to go, oh, crap, what do I do now? Then you have the Garland Nixons of the world, the alternative media people who are saying, hey, the guy's got some problems. You got to get rid of him. What are you trying? Let's not pretend like this guy's okay. Not you got to get rid of him, but let's not pretend like this guy's okay. So then when he flops, the alternative media and the Garland Nixon of the world say, aha, I told you so. Either way, from both ends, you've set up this high expectation that he's fine. You've said he's great, he's fine, he's wonderful, so that when he flops, you get an exaggerated reaction. Everybody screams, aha, look at him. And then you can do what you wanted to do all along. You knew he was going to flop. You did that so he would flop. And you told everybody he's wonderful, he's great, he's sharp as a tack, so that when he flopped, you would put an exclamation mark on his cognitive decline. Everybody would scream about it later. It worked perfectly. Exactly perfectly. He flopped, and the alternative media went, aha, I told you so, just like you knew they would. The people who were saying he was okay went, oh, I guess we got to get rid of him, just like you knew they would. And now the factions of the ruling elite get to argue over who they want. And now you get Kamala Harris. Let's talk about Kamala Harris, about this thing. A couple of things behind the scenes. Let me tell you what I hear. I've heard so-called insiders. Number one, and Obama ain't thrilled with her. She is not his person at all. Right. Number two, she's Clinton's. She's Hillary's person. 100%. She was chosen by Hillary's people. There were some concessions made and they went with her. There were people that didn't think she should be, but Hillary's people took her to, you can probably read, there's articles where they brought her to the Hamptons and all of these donors met with her and they said, boom, they touched her on the forehead with a sword. You are now officially the VP, and that was it. So there was all kinds of concessions given. Kamala becomes the VP, but there was always a discussion about her competence, about her ability, her political abilities, which we have seen, which we have observed with our very own eyes and ears, and we know. I'll just put it plain. She's a poor politician. I remember, and here's the game. They think they can get away, or thought, but I don't know, maybe even think that they can get away with a bad politician. I remember I was interviewing, we were talking about Kamala when she first came out. I was interviewing, I had some guys on, some diehard Democratic Party operatives, blah, blah, blah. And I said, she's a very poor politician. And some guy came out with, well, I think we have to rethink the way we talk about a black female, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, she's a poor politician. I don't want to hear it. Right? What happens here? Let's talk about the obvious. It's the game. The game is when it is beneficial for the ruling elite. They play we've got to support her because she's a black female, a minority female, a diverse female, whatever you want to call her. She's not really black per se. She's kind of mixed, race, whatever. But the truth of the matter is it has nothing to do with her as a politician, right? You could have a mixed race person that has Down syndrome. Would that might be the nicest, sweetest person in the world, but you probably wouldn't want to elect them president. You probably wouldn't want to have them fly your plane. I mean, you're getting in the 747 and you're flying from New York to San Francisco, and they get on the radio and they say, guess we've got good news. Kamala Harris is going to be flying your plane. And you're like, but she doesn't know how to fly a plane. And yes, but she is a diverse female of mixed heritage, race, blah, blah, blah. What's wrong with you, you racist misogynist? And your answer is, I don't want to die. I get on this plane. I don't care. Give me somebody that can fly a plane. I don't really care about their race, age, none of the above. I want somebody who's really good at flying a plane to take off in New York and to land in San Francisco safely. See, when you're, imagine a football game. What do you want? Well, we're going to have our goalkeeper. Really? Your goalkeeper? Well, they got to block the soccer ball coming in at high speed. Well, Kamala Harris. I didn't know Kamala Harris ever played soccer. She doesn't. But she is a diverse female of Indian and African American and Jamaican and blah, this kind of heritage, that kind of heritage. I don't care. We're going to lose 900 to nothing. They're going to kick the soccer ball past her 100 times in a row. Right? She's like 57 years old or something. That ain't a good idea to play her in, right? That's the game. We're supposed to ignore the issue of competency. Why? Well, she's a diverse black female. She's a diverse female, blah, blah, blah. And what happens? Here's the thing about it. Will you vote for her? If you say no, it couldn't possibly have anything to do with ideology. It couldn't have anything to do with the fact that you're unhappy about the direction of the country, or you're not a Democrat, you don't like her party, you don't like anything. It couldn't be that. It's got to be two things. You can't say you're not going to vote for her because, well, I'm not going to vote for her. Aha, it's because she's a woman. Aha, it's because she's a diverse female of color, whatever. I don't even know what they're calling her, to be honest. I don't even know what the game is, right? But whatever. So it is a way that, as the neoliberal, neoconservative, as the imperial masters always get, the game they play is a game to hit you over the head with something. Right? It's never to work out a deal with you, to talk with you, to maybe try to come to some kind of agreement with you. No, it's do what we tell you, or we're going to hit you over the head with a blunt object. And the blunt object is, you gonna vote for Kamala Garland? Nah. Oh, it has to be because you're a misogynist. Yeah, okay, whatever. No, either that or it's because you're a racist, white supremacist, in fact. You don't want a diverse female of color, female of color to get elected, right? That's the setup. And I say, yeah, but I'm a lefty, actually pretty far lefty, and I do not align with her ideologically, and I do not believe in the same politics and position and way forward and all that stuff as she does. That's beside the point. That's not, you just don't like women empowered, blah, 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 right? But let me say this. And everybody knows me that knows Garland Nixon's a lefty, but there are a lot of people that are of other ideologies, various ideologies, that are willing to listen to Garland Nixon as a lefty, because my ideology does not define me from the context of how I analyze politics. It does in a way, but overall, I just try to figure out what's fair, what's reasonable, what the people in power are trying to do, and whether I like it or not, whether I'm on board with it or not, it doesn't matter. It is what it is. So it's like this. You have to support her because she's a diverse female of something or other, color or whatever, right? And then I bring in the obvious. What about Clarence Thomas? The people who are telling me that I have to support her because she's a diverse female, blah, blah, blah. And I say, okay, I'm a lefty. My ideology doesn't align with Clarence Thomas. He's an ultra conservative, right? Therefore, probably, it doesn't any more align with him than it does with align any more with him than it does with her. I'm a lefty. You know what I mean? I mean, no, I'm not down with that stuff. It's just not who I am. It's like you're asking an Eagles fan to, vote for the Giants as the best team of the decade. Man, they're an Eagles fan. That ain't who they are. They don't like the Giants, right? And it's I'm not saying this from the perspective of teams, but you could look at it that way. My ideology is left. It doesn't align with the Democrats. It doesn't align with the Republicans. It doesn't align. I see the Democrats and the Republicans as part of a rotten imperial system that goes around the world, starting wars, overthrowing governments, assassinating people, interfering with elections. That's what the U.S. does all over the world, lying to its citizens, propagandizing its citizens. If American citizens understood the foreign policy of their government, they would vomit and reject it if they understood it. Almost every one of them would be like, really? But I thought we were the good guys. Okay, so a country, a government that has to lie to its citizens nonstop to hide its true machinations worldwide, come on. You expect me to support that? No, I'm for telling them the truth. Tell them the truth. If that's what you do, if you're going to go assassinate people, overthrow governments, start wars, just say to your people, that's what we're doing, and let them make a decision. But instead, the U.S. government has to have the illusion of democracy, the illusion that you're actually choosing the people and that they're going to represent you. It's a joke. But unfortunately for America, you've got a lot of people who are the punchline, who believe they think that the government, they think they're choosing a candidate. We've got to get behind that candidate or this candidate. They don't understand the concept of Bonapartism. Bonapartism was not Napoleon Bonaparte. Actually, it was his nephew who was a politician. Bonapartism, the concept of Bonapartism is simple. Okay. You've got the ruling elite, you've got the working class down here. So let's say you've got two factions in a ruling elite that are at war. Well, there's only, their small group. What do they have to do? They each have to convince a section of the working class, right? A segment of the working class to support them. So they come out, and this section of the ruling elite, who means to screw the working class over, it comes up with a narrative, and a certain section of the working class support them. And this fraction of the ruling elite, they come up with their own plan, and they get a different segment of the working class to support them. So you have these two factions of the ruling elite who are screwing the working class, but they divide the working class into segments to fight each other on behalf of the ruling elite. That's the game. I ain't playing that game. I understand. The Republicans don't mean me any good. I understand the Democrats don't mean me any good. I understand they're both going to lie to me about foreign policy. They're going to lie to me about what they do, and then they're going to do things that are detrimental to me and people in my class. That's the game. Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, I'm laughing at those who are now like, we've got a woman of color. Really? Okay, why didn't she take Clarence Thomas as her VP? And then you can have a woman of color and a black vice president. How great would that be? And those same people will go, not Clarence Thomas. He's a right-wing, crazy conservative guy. And I'd say, well, according to your logic, we're supposed to choose by race and sex, right? Why is it that when it comes to Kamala Harris, we're supposed to choose by race and sex, but when it comes to Clarence Thomas, we're supposed to use ideology? I got an idea. We're supposed to, reject him because of his ideology. To which I'll say, I got an idea. I'll reject both of them because their ideology. I'm not going to go to pick both. I'm not going to say, in the instance of Kamala Harris, I'm going to pick her because of race and sex. In the instance of Clarence Thomas, I'm going to reject race and sex, and I'm only going to pick him based on his political ideology. I'm going to use the opposite. How about if I do the other way? How about if I just flip it and say, I would ask those who are making that argument, why don't I flip it? Let's logically explore. Let's do an intellectual exploration here, an exercise for one moment. Let's flip that, right? Ask the same person who says we've got to support her because she's a female of color, blah, blah, blah. Oh, we've got to reject Clarence Thomas because of his ideology. I'd say, would it be okay if I flip it? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to judge Clarence Thomas based on his race and sex, and I'm going to judge her based on ideology. Let's do that. He's a black man of color, whatever. Guess I've got to support him. He's the next Obama, right? Remember, we're dropping ideology now. Now, let's go to Kamala Harris. I got to reject her. Why? Because when I look at her ideology, I'm opposed to it. She's a Zionist. She's pro-war. She's supporting these things in the Democratic Party that I strongly oppose. I'm opposed to Zionism. I'm opposed to war. Well, then I can't support her. Okay? No, can't do that. So what they're doing is this. The people that are arguing for her is saying, they're saying this. When I tell you, see, this is what it comes down to it. When the ruling elite gives you the orders, you're to evaluate politician A, Kamala Harris, by race and sex. You're supposed to support her because of her sex and race. That's what you're supposed to do. Okay, can I apply that standard to Clarence Thomas? No. You have to apply a different standard to Clarence Thomas, and you have to evaluate him based on his ideology. Can I reverse that? No. You can only use it as we told you. It is opportunistic. When they tell you to use a particular standard to evaluate, that's what you got to use. You got to use the one you're told when you're told to use it. And we're not supposed to look at it and say, well, gee, that's inconsistent. And they'll say, shut up. Of course it's inconsistent, but we're in charge and you're not. Don't you get a good feeling? You're a minority. Don't you get a good feeling? You want to support minorities. Don't you get a good feeling? I'm not into politics for a good feeling. I got an ideology here. I got things I want to accomplish. I think I got things I want to happen. If I'm going to support as I've said many times, it's like championship wrestling here. You know, it's like you go into championship wrestling, you know the good guys ain't good guys, and you know the bad guys ain't bad guys, but you get a good feeling. I'm on the side of the good guys, and okay, brother, I'm going to beat up the Iron Sheik, and you're okay, good, great, I feel good, and I'm opposing the bad guys. That's all it is. They give you the illusion of democracy. They give you the illusion of supporting a woman of color based on race and color. At the same time, they tell you do not use that standard unless we tell you to. What happens if she picks another woman of color? You know what they're going to say? Hey, okay, well, great. I picked her. Let me say this. What would happen if Trump had chosen, I don't know, Nikki Haley, who's, you know, Indian also, right? She's all Indian. Kamala's part Indian. What would happen if Trump had picked her, right? The same people would have said, she's a woman of color, we've got to support Kamala Harris. Okay, well, Trump picked a woman of color, kind of the same color. She's Indian. Can we support her too? No, she's a right-wing lunatic. Oh, wait a minute. We've got two women, both of them of Indian descent. But when it comes to this one, we're supposed to support her because she's of Indian and Jamaican descent. When it comes to this one, we're supposed to ignore the fact that she's of Indian descent and use ideology only as the standard of which we evaluate her, right? There's an inconsistency here. Why do we have that inconsistency? Because you're being had, because you're being lied to, you're being took, hoodwinked, bamboozled. As Malcolm X said, the wolf is over there looking scary, and they show you the fox. They both want to eat you, but the fox kind of looks like he's smiling. If you look at a fox's mouth, he looks like he's smiling at you, right? So they show you normally you wouldn't go to the fox. Hey, I ain't going to the fox. He's going to try to eat me. They show you the wolf. Oh, that's pretty scary. You know, the fox don't look so bad now. That's the game. And we're supposed to ignore ideology. I'm supposed to ignore that people were running around screaming genocide Joe, that Joe Biden couldn't go anywhere. Everywhere he went to fundraisers or whatever, people were outside with signs, genocide Joe, they're holding up their signs, you're committing a genocide. I have tears in my eyes every day when I go online and I see pictures of children blown to smithereens, arms and legs blown off, whole families gone dead. As I see the Zionists in Israel dropping bombs on a tent city, saying to people who they're starving to death and bombing innocent civilians, the genocide they're committing, saying to these people, take all of your stuff out of that area that we just bombed, the few of you that survived, and all of you go to that area there and set up your tents. And they're like, but there's a big red X on that area. Kind of looks like somebody's targeting it. No, you'll be safe there. They go to that area. Israel flies over a plane, drops a gigantic bomb on the red X, kills everybody there. People who aren't around, who are around the edges of the explosion, they get their arms and legs blown off, they get burnt, disfigured, maimed, all of the above. And I gotta go online and see that every day. And I'm sitting there, Dale, every day with tears in my eyes. What the hell am I looking at? People starving, they're skinny. What am I? My God! And I look at it and then I say, could there be a country? Could there be an ideology? Could there be a group of people more evil than this? No. And that includes Joe Biden. And that includes Kamala Harris. And now I'm supposed to overlook that Kamala Harris is party to a genocide, murdering and slaughtering men, women, and children. I'm supposed to suddenly get joyous. She's a woman of color. She's genocidal. She's a genocide. And let me tell you something that's going to happen that I firmly believe. Because, you know, in my professional life, I have to be an unbiased analyst, and I am. I think I'm pretty good at it. Really, on this YouTube, I'm pretty unbiased. I don't call it like it is. I just put a little emotion in it. The real me comes out, right? But um analyzing this thing, like so many other things that happen in politics. Let me give you an example. When 1965, an apartheid United States, totally apartheid country, they passed the Voting Rights Act. So black people are now, you can't just tell them no, they can't vote. You can't turn them away from the poll and poll taxes and all of these things. Black people can so-called vote, right? And there was euphoria everywhere. Brown versus education. They're going to integrate schools. There was euphoria in the black community and for 6 months or so. And about a year later, they realized, hey, people ain't doing this. This is not being withheld. So they had the immediate euphoria. And then they realized that, yeah, they could put that in writing, but it wasn't going to be practiced in practical application. It wasn't happening for years and years and years. Okay, here's my point. Something happens, particularly when it comes to minorities. And there is some kind of an immediate euphoria. Hey, whoever, your group has rights. Yeah, oh my God, we got rights now. Yay, right? There's a euphoria. But when you understand that things are very slow to happen and then reality hits after the euphoria, it's just brief, So I think, this thing's always buzzing. Sorry about this, but I have to answer. I had to answer that. It was very work related. So here's my point. Now that I've got that up, see, now that's how you know this is real, that I'm not AI. I'm like getting a text work related at 7:17 in the morning. I got to answer, right? So I couldn't be an AI figure. Or could I? Anyway, I could be Max Headroom, right? For the old heads that remember that. But at any rate, so where the hell was I? Oh crap! I'm sure somebody remind me. I got distracted. Where's you guys work with me? I'm looking in the chat. Somebody's going to remind me where I am because I got ADD and I'm going to forget. Come on, chat. Come through for me, chat. Work with Garland. Do something to help him out. Yeah, you guys are friggin', come on, you guys, you're killing me. You're killing me. Somebody in the chat's supposed to be saying, this is where you are, Garland. You were just talking about X. Maybe he will get arrested. You just, when you think you got friends, they stick a knife in your back. You're saying vote for Jill Stein. Oh, God. And then we got people trying to like stick there. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody in there says, yeah, you were saying vote for Trump, yes, euphoria. There we go. Thank you. There we go. You know what? Now we have somebody in the chat who's on my side, right? At any rate, so what happens? You get your immediate euphoria. Yay. And then at some point, things go down, right? It starts high, goes down. Okay. Kamala ran in 2019. Okay. And when she did, what happened? She runs and she had pretty good numbers. And a lot of people thought, ooh, Kamala's going to be the next Obama, which, if you know how I feel about Obama's policies, notwithstanding Obama, his family, his wife, his kids, his policies, that was not something that was real attractive to me, right? She's going to be the next version of a guy who literally went to Wall Street bankers and told them, I'm the only thing between you and the pitchforks. Right. And at any rate, so she comes out running. She hits the ground hard. And the concept of Kamala Harris as a politician, right, as a female of color, all this kind of crap. She's a very attractive woman, all these things, right? She's held a high positions, attorney general in California. That concept was attractive to a certain group of people in this country, right? Those who don't see politics through the lens of actual politics, right? That's beside the point. They who see it as some way to correct cultural and errors and bad things of the past. That's what we're supposed to do, right? The bamboozled, we'll call them the bamboozled people. So these people were like, yay, we've got a woman of color, woo-hoo-hoo, and her numbers look pretty good. And then Kamala started talking, and she's just not good. Here's the only way I can put it. She's not a good politician. A good politician can bullcrap you, right? A good politician can say nothing and you'll thank him for saying it. A good politician is somebody that asks a question. Obama was a damn good politician. Bill Clinton was a good politician. You know what I mean? Trump's a damn good politician, right? Why? A good politician is full of crap. I could be a good politician. I'm full of crap. I could run off at the mouth. If I had evil machinations, I could be a good politician. Look at this show. I run my mouth for like a friggin' hour or two, right? You could ask me something and I could talk for 20 minutes and never answer the question, and you'd shake my hand and thank me for answering you, right? You're just a good, some people are good BSers. You know the game, right? Okay. If you're not a good BSer, you ain't a good politician. So when they ask you something, you remain confident. When somebody asks you a question that either you don't want to answer or you can't answer for strategic purposes, right? Hey, what about so-and-so? Number one, you have to look confident. I'm glad you asked that question. That's a question a lot of people have been asking me, right? You do what's called what is it? In sales, there's a term. You might have heard this: feel, felt, found, right? You can do feel, felt, found. It works like this. I know how you feel. I found a lot of people who, I've met a lot of people in my life that have felt that way. But you know what I found? Right? That's one way to get out of things: feel, felt, found. Well, Garland, what about blah, blah, blah? And people say this, and now you scumbag, and then why, and what? That's a good question, and I know how these people feel. And I found that there's a lot of people out here that have felt that way. You know what I found? And off I go. Feel, felt, found. That's a simple way to bullcrap people. That's a simple way if you're selling something. Hey, I'd like you to buy this rock. I don't know. Why would I buy a rock? I mean, wouldn't it be stupid for me to buy a rock? I know how you feel. And over the course of my rock sales, I found a lot of people that have felt that way. But you know what we found? That if you get the right rock, the right color, if you see that rock and you feel like rock is me, that you'll put it someplace in the house, you'll walk by it every day, you'll look by that rock and you'll say, oh, that's a nice rock. And I bought it and I got a fair price for the rock. And what's important is, and you offer you good service. What if the rock breaks? It may need to be reshined. So I'm going to give you a fair, right? I ain't saying nothing. Feel, felt, found. So if a good politician can do feel, felt, found, or some other trick, there's a million of them, to say nothing and pretend like you said something. You got to be able to do that to be a good politician. Kamala can't do that. So what happened? They started off with euphoria. Yay! They didn't look into her atrocious record from a cultural perspective, right? From a justice perspective. Her record as an AG was atrocious. It was not something that you would think that people who were pro-Black or pro-minority or pro-poor people would ever say, hey, let's go in that direction. No, she did terrible things. She didn't even have the sense back then to lie, to do feel, felt, found. When she supported keeping people in prison, and they were like, hey, we need to let these people out. She literally said, no, we need to keep them in because the state of California needs them for labor. You don't say that, even if it's true, even if you're a puppet for the system. You got to lie and come up with something else. She didn't have sense enough to come up with a decent lie. It's not just that she did it. Of course, she's a puppet for the system. That's what the system's going to do. It's going to take advantage of people. It's going to take advantage of the 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment that says people cannot be forced into unpaid labor, right? Involuntary servitude, unless they're duly convicted of a crime. The 13th Amendment still allows for slavery in the United States. And you got to find a way, if you're a puppet for the system, to excuse that. Well, these people need to finish serving. They've committed a crime and they've done horrible things, and they need to finish serving their duty to society. And that my job as the Attorney General is to ensure that these people serve. I don't come out and say, no, we need them for it's 13th Amendment. It's free it's prison labor. You don't come out and say that. Well, that's the kind of gross errors that she makes with her yap. And so what happens? People hear her talk. When she gets flustered, she gets angry and starts to fall apart. And when she does, the euphoria and her poll numbers start out here. And the more they examine her record as AG, the more they listen to her in her attempts to mitigate those verbally, the more they listen to watch her give her various talks and discussions and debates, and she seems to be flustered and she gets angry easy. She seems very, to me, this is my opinion, uncomfortable with her emotions. And she seems to me that the number one emotion, the emotion that she's most comfortable with is anger. And she gets angry quick. And then she's, you know how it is when you start getting angry, you don't make good decisions. And as these things start to manifest themselves throughout the observing public, her numbers are here. Oh, she's a Black female woman of color. Let's take a look at her. Look, here's her polling. She's a Black female woman of color, and she's attractive, and she seems like she's smart, and she's got a good degree, and she's, and then there up they go. And then she starts talking, and they start examining her policies. Oh, wait a minute. She was a bad, mean person as an AG, and why is she always angry? And for God's sake, what the hell was that piece of word salad, right? So what happens is this. She starts up. The concept of Kamala Harris, a Black woman, which she's of color. Would you call her Black? I really wouldn't. She's a mixed race person. The woman, the concept of a woman of color as a president is attractive to some people. But at some point, it goes from the concept to there's actually a person there, right? Just like someone that says, well, wouldn't you want a diverse pilot? Well, actually, I'd want a good pilot. The concept of a Black, strong, mixed race woman, female of color, piloting your airplane from New York to San Francisco. Doesn't that seem great? Not if we go slamming into the ground and friggin', just east of Kansas City and die in a fireball. Well, actually, no, it really doesn't. A good pilot. I think that's a good idea. If it happens to be that there's a woman diverse of color, strong, that's a good pilot. I'm down with that. I don't want to reject it. Oh, no. If you say, well, my, Trans World Airlines, I'm the CEO of Trans World Airlines, and we've got two pilots, and one of them is a white guy, he's 58, and one of them is a Black female of color, this and that, right? And she's the only Black female pilot that we've ever had. And she's just as good as this guy. She's really talented, really good. And we decided we're going to give her a shot. We're going to let her fly the plane. We're going to, we're bringing her in. She's going to fly the plane. And, we're trying to be reasonable here because in the past we wouldn't really hire females. So now, I think it's only fair. She's highly qualified. I'd be like, look, you had me at highly qualified. I don't care. I'm getting in this plane. Give me a good pilot. If you want to make it a Black female, here's the part. Highly qualified, is that what I heard? Yeah. Stick somebody like that behind the wheel. I don't need to know anything else about them. And then I'll land safely in San Francisco. However you choose to do it, if you want to be socially conscious, or that's your airline. You can be as socially conscious as you want. Just give me the best pilot. That's all. I'm trying to get there alive. Is there anything wrong with that, right? That's where I'm coming from. So the bottom line is, because my life is on that plane. My life is, flying from New York to San Francisco on a plane. And I don't want my life to be ended because you decided to do something that didn't involve picking the best possible pilot and giving me the best possible plane. Okay. So bottom line is this. So my point is, in 2019, she comes out and she had good polling, and the more people looked at her, the worse her polls went. The more they listened to her, the worse her polls went. She was just the whole word salad thing, the whole really weird. If you watch, to me, if you watch Kamala Harris, at some point you start saying there's something weird about her emotional response to things. What's she going to do when challenged? If she's well prepared, if she's extremely well prepared, I think she can be reasonable, sometimes good as a politician, as a debater, right? If she's very, very well prepared, she can present fine, right? If she's not well prepared, she's really bad. And that's when you get the word salads, when she's not really prepared, when she's off the cuff. And she starts doing this with her hands, doing one of these, and she starts, saying the same thing over and over. She'll do, that's something she'll do, you'll be like, um, you've probably heard some of the things. What does she say? Unhindered by the past or something like that. Whatever, people have heard that, right? A lot of people have probably heard that, right? And basically she starts with saying whatever the title or concept she's talking about, and she'll repeat that over and over and over and over. Like she looks like she's looking for words. She looks like she's looking for something to say. And then ultimately she sounds like a person who's trying to sound smart. And there's nothing makes you look stupider than trying to sound smart. Just say what you're thinking. Just be comfortable in your own skin and say what you believe. And if people don't like it, if they think you're an idiot, maybe you are. That's all right too. It's all right to be an idiot sometimes. There are things that people ask me about at times, and I don't really know that much about it. And I may talk about it, but I realize and recognize I don't know that much about it. I do the best I can. I may sound like a fool, a complete blithering idiot. And you know what? In some instances, I am a blithering idiot. I'm a human being. Right? If you listen to me talk about some subjects, you'll say that Garland's a genius. How does he know so much? And if you listen to me talk about other subjects, you'll say, for God's sake, that guy's a flipping idiot. What is he talking about? That is the nature and the duality of mankind, right? In some instances, we can be really good human beings, and others we can be bad. Sometimes we sound really smart. Sometimes we sound really stupid. You got to be comfortable in your own skin and be okay with either one. Kamala, I don't think she's comfortable. I don't think she's confident. I'm guessing now, but for whatever reason, she doesn't speak well. She doesn't present well in public. And I suspect that her numbers are starting up. Basically, about the, I think that there's a still a question as to whether or not she'll be the nominee. I think Obama doesn't want her to be the nominee. I'm told by people, I'm told Obama don't really like her. That this is part of, people who know the inside of politics know that in the Democratic Party, the two big machines are the Clinton machine and the Obama machine. There are some connections as to their donors, but those are the two big machines, Clinton and Obama machine, and that they don't like each other, that the Clintons and the Obamas really don't like each other, and that she's the Clinton choice and Obama wants somebody different. That's not the direction at all that he wants to go. That's what I'm told. I do know this. Let me find this. Let me find something for you. Let me show you an article that gives you an implication. Come on, this thing's moving so slow. Okay. Let's look at this. Obama declines to endorse Kamala Harris to succeed. Biden predicts outstanding nominee will emerge. I want you to think about that, right? There's Obama skinning and grinning with Joe, blah, blah, blah. Barack Obama steered clear of endorsing Harris on Sunday, instead alluding to the possibility of an open primary, right? I don't know how hard it is for you to read the tea leaves, but it looks pretty obvious to me. What he's saying is we need an open primary. We need somebody else. Why? For all of his imperial puppetry, Obama is a product of Wall Street. He eats, drinks, and sleeps for Wall Street. People that understand him understand Wall Street. He really represents Wall Street, as if there's a politician that does it. But first and foremost, okay. But I will say this, and give the devil his due, as they say. No fan of Obama, but he's a smart politician. Obama's a smart guy. Obama's nobody's fool. which makes him, for a lefty like me, it makes him the most dangerous, right? The most dangerous of your adversaries. I'm a lefty. I mean, I'm opposed to war. Of course, politically, Obama's one of my adversaries, right? But you have to understand your adversaries and know their strengths and weaknesses. And as far as I'm concerned, Obama's a very smart politician. Very, very smart. He understands the system. And most importantly, he understands how to get elected. He understands how to connect with people. He understands the importance of connecting with people emotionally, of using the right rhetoric, of projecting the right image. He understands that stuff and he's good at it. Okay. He knows what I know. Kamala Harris ain't good at any of it. She's terrible at it. And right now, I think Barack Obama realizes that if Kamala Harris comes out, all of these people are going to be, yay, oh boy. Here's where they don't get any gain from it. All of these black women are going to bite the hook. Yay, the first black woman, blah, 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 blah. We've got to support her. Here's the problem. They're already voting for Biden. The segment that is the most ardent supporters of the Democrats, the ones that will absolutely vote for Biden, that will crawl through 10 miles of broken glass and razor blades on their hands and knees to get to the polls to vote for women, to vote for Biden, are black women. So the group of people who are already show up are going to be the most enthused. That doesn't give you anything. All you got is the people that were already going to vote for you, that they're going to vote for you. Well, that you didn't get anything. What you want is, what did Obama give them? A bunch of young people who never show up. Obama won. He brought in a new demographic. All of these young people of all various races, right? All of these young people who never show up, Obama brought them in and he won. He's a smart politician. He's a good politician. I mean, notwithstanding his ideological inclinations, which I don't agree with, he's a smart and good politician. Give the devil his due. And he brought in a new demographic. It would have done him no good to bring in black women. They already had black women. They needed to bring somebody. It's like it would be like a Democrat choosing the vice president from New York or Maryland or Massachusetts. Why? Because they already got that state. It brings them nothing. It doesn't bring in a demographic a state. If you're a Democrat, you would be more likely, if it was a close race, to choose somebody from Ohio, maybe Florida, a VP that's popular in their own state, in a state that's hard for you to win, so the VP can bring in a state. So they can bring in a new demographic, namely the people in this particular state that you weren't going to get before, right? So it would do you no good to bring in somebody from Massachusetts. Massachusetts is in the bag. It's done if you're running for president as a Democrat, right? She's from California. So you've already got California. And she's going to appeal mostly to black women. You already got black women. What does she bring in new? She doesn't bring in anything new. But that's okay. If they felt that she's really, really good and she'll win, then they should run her, because it doesn't matter. You shouldn't prohibit. You shouldn't say, we're not going to run you because you're a black woman or you're from California or whatever, because you could be hurting yourself if that's the best candidate that you think could win. They're doing it the other way around. They're bringing a candidate who has very poor political inclinations and has a record. This is what you don't want. This is what you don't want in politics. You have to look, if you're going to run somebody, a candidate, you got to look at their history. You got to do some research. If somebody comes to me and says, so Joe Blow is running, how do you think they're going to do? As an analyst, as a political analyst, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to look into, have they run before? Yeah, they ran for Senate in 1999. They ran for this in 2012. And I'm going to look at the polling numbers and say, when they started off running, what were their polling numbers? It's 6%. What they end up at 38%. That tells me that if this person, even though they lost then, it tells me they started off low with low name recognition. And as people got to see him and hear him, more people joined him. I would say that person has a chance at winning. Now, that person has a chance at winning. I look at 2 times they ran, and both times this person ran, their polling numbers started low and their polling numbers increased. What do we learn from that? We learned that particular politician, that whenever they run, that their polling numbers increase from wherever they are. So I'd say, put your money on that person. They got a chance. That's somebody you can start with, because what that tells you is when people see them and hear them, they tend to like them. More people like them. People come on board. Now, let's do it the other way. I look at a politician. Tell me about that politician. Well, the politician ran for president in 2020. Okay. And what happened? They started off with pretty good poll numbers. And what happened? Their poll numbers cratered. The more people saw them and heard from them, the worse they did. I'd say don't put your money behind that person at all, because look, history is important. We view things all over the world. Wise people, people who try to have some level of accuracy, view things through a historical context. And I don't mean an ahistorical context. I mean a historical context, right? So if I look at the history of Kamala Harris and I say, what big office did she run for? President, how'd she do? And she started off, she started off pretty good. She ended up pretty bad. Now, she ran for Senate. Well, she ran for Senate in the bluest of blue states. And so she ran, she ran, she ran for, so not Senate, I guess it was House, whatever it was. She ran, but bottom line is, I don't, she was an AG. I don't look at her, I don't evaluate her history from the perspective of how she did in the bluest of blue states. I evaluate her history and how she did, in more of a national environment. In a state, I don't know if you know this, in a state, I found this a while back, the most powerful politician in a state is the senior senator, right? Whoever the senior senator is in a given state is the most powerful politician. The state machine is run unofficially, informally chaired by the senior senator. So if the senior senator in California said, Kamala Harris is going to be the AG or whatever, she's going to get this position, the whole machine will get behind her and shove her into that position. So you can't look at state politics through the same lens as federal politics. It's a lot harder to do that on a federal level. So, but those are all the historical context that we need to look at. But the bottom line is we have a specific example of the office that she's running for now. Notwithstanding anything else she's done, she has run for this office before. And her numbers started off pretty decent and they cratered. My guess is her numbers will start off pretty good and they'll crater. And a big part of it is this. Let me add this. She'll be coming into town wearing the policies of Joe Biden. That they've been able to hide her pretty well. And one of the things that's going to happen is she's going to be pressed about her positions on Israel, which ain't going to work out real good for her. She'll be pressed on her about her positions on various potential conflicts around the world, and various other things. And we'll see what happens when she gets flustered. We'll see what happens when they ask questions that she needs to be able to dance around a little bit. Questions that she needs to be able to filibuster. I mean, as a politician, we may not like it, though. That's the game, right? So we'll see her political skills on display. What happens when they ask her a question and she really can't answer it, or her answer would be unpopular? How does she massage her answer in a way that it doesn't freak people out, right? I don't think that's going to work out well for her. And the policies of Biden are not popular at all. Before Trump got shot, let's be honest, he was winning. I mean, let's not pretend like Trump came from behind, that when the assassination attempt was made on Donald Trump, that he was in the doldrums, that he was in last place, and suddenly, because people felt sorry for him, he bolted in the first place. Trump was winning. He was predicted to win. He was winning in every battleground state, because they were like, hey, Donald Trump is only up by 2 on national polls. National polls are of no value at all. You got to win the states. For everybody knows in politics, forget the national poll. You got to win the states. He was ahead in every single battleground state, which means Joe Biden loses. Joe Biden had no chance at that time. So Donald Trump was already winning before the incident happened, where there was an assassination attempt. Might not be the last, but the assassination attempt happened, and I believe that only increased his chances of winning. And now Kamala Harris has come in, And I think that increases his chance of winning. One of the factors that has to be taken into account, and this is known by political analysts, right? Most political analysts have read a book. It used to be called The 13 Keys to the White House by Professor Alan Lichtman. Now it's called The Keys to the White House. And it's things that are used to predict who will win from the election. And the way he puts it is the incumbent party or the challenging or opposing party, right? One of the advantages of an incumbent party is in and of itself incumbency. That's one of the numbers. That's one of the keys that's checked off, right? The fact that Joe Biden is not stepping down, Joe Biden, even if he ran, would still have one advantage, and that is the advantage of incumbency. Do I think it would save him? No. But as far as from the perspective of evaluating who's going to win, that is an advantage for the incumbent party incumbency. Now, Kamala Harris, putting her in as the nominee, or whoever it is the nominee, automatically negates that one advantage that the Democrats have. Now, I'm not saying that's enough to save them, but that's one of the few advantages that they have. And using anybody other than Joe Biden, they lose that advantage of incumbency. Now, that's not to say they should have went with Joe Biden by any stretch of the imagination. It was clearly obvious that Joe Biden's cognitive decline. So he discredited and delegitimized the ruling elite. People looked at him, and the ruling elite that support him are discredited and delegitimized. We have what some have called a crisis of legitimacy, the ruling elite's right to rule, right? Joe Biden's competency and the fact that the ruling elite hid that for so long compromises their legitimacy as legitimate and competent rulers. So that is not, that what I'm saying is that the issue of incumbency most likely would not overcome this crisis of legitimacy, which is, might I add, it's not brought about by Joe Biden's cognitive decline, but I think it is exaggerated by Joe Biden's cognitive decline. Because people were already like, man, what are these people doing that are running this country? They're mad. They're screwing everything up. And then Joe Biden's cognitive decline, they looked at it and they said, and not only that, whoever's the president, it's a fraud. He ain't really the president. That guy ain't running things, right? So it magnified the crisis of legitimacy that the ruling elite was already suffering. So I guess you could weigh that against losing or gaining the advantage of incumbency, and I guess they did, and they decided he's got to go. Whatever the matter, whatever the case, she's not going to have the advantage of incumbency. But she's going to still have to eat all of Joe Biden's policies. So she gets the worst of things without the best. She loses the crisis of incumbency, but she was part of the Biden administration. So everything that went bad in the Biden administration is still going to be put on her back. And she's not a good politician. She's not going to be able to do well in struggling with a very difficult environment. You're taking a person who's not a good politician and putting them in a very difficult environment. You're putting her in a horse race. You're putting her in a game where she's down by 3 touchdowns with 8 minutes left in the game. She's down by 21 points in a football game, in an American football game. And there ain't but 7 minutes left. How do you win that one? So you're taking a person who's already not very good, and you're putting in a position that somebody who was really good might not be able to overcome, because the circumstances are dire for the Democratic Party. So there we go. And I think what will happen, here's my final prediction. I think what we'll see is that Kamala Harris's incompetency will further humiliate and expose the ruling elite. It will exacerbate the crisis of legitimacy for the ruling elite, because at some point, if they run her, people in the Democratic Party will look at the ruling elite and say, who the hell's idea was this? At some point, she's going to do some really things that are quite unattractive to the voters. She's going to do some things that the voters are going to think of back of Joe Biden's cognitive decline. Her too? What the hell is this catching here? Is it contagious? Is cognitive decline contagious? How'd it go from him to her? She ain't even 60 years old, for God's sake. What is she doing with cognitive decline? That's going to happen. And then they will look at the ruling elite and say, what are you people doing? You have no idea what you're doing, right? That's what I think happens. It exacerbates rather than mitigates the crisis that the ruling elite find themselves in supporting a guy with dementia. I think it exacerbates that. And ultimately we got a new puppet that's just as incompetent and embarrassing as the old puppet. Because let's face it, the president's the puppet for the ruling elite. It's something to make you feel good. That's what they got now. You know what I mean? It's now, that's what they're going to. Hey, we got Kamala Harris. And you're like, yeah, the price of everything is going through the roof. The price of gas. I'm worried. Am I going to die in a nuclear war? All these terrible things are going on. We're slipping into a civil war. What the hell's going on here? This thing's falling apart. What are you people doing? And they're like, hey, look, a woman of color. Doesn't that make you feel good? And there's some people like, yes, that makes me feel good. So that's all you get. That's what you get now. You get a good feeling. I think that good feeling is going to be short-lived. Garland Nixon here. Don't forget to share this on all your social media platforms. You can look down below and you'll see that, you know, if you can support the channel, buy me a coffee, Patreon, Cash App, whatever the heck, you know, whatever, PayPal, you name it, it's certainly appreciated. If you can't, that's okay. Keep your money for your family. That's what's important. Just make sure you share this on all your social media platforms. Let me just look before I go. Somebody put Trump and Vance are puppets. Yeah, that's the nature of the system. A system of puppetry. They're puppets for the ruling elite. I'm voting third party, my friends. I'm voting for Jill Stein. I ain't saying she's perfect, but, you know, she ain't going to win. We already know that. But I'm going to make my point, my position by voting third party. How about that? All right. Darling, can you recommend a good book from your shelf? Just read Christopher Simpson, Blowback. Was excellent, sure. Oh, let me pick a good one. Oh. Here's one I haven't read yet. But here's one. I recommend one. Jacques Bard, The Russian Art of War, How the West Led Ukraine to Defeat. I haven't read it yet, but I love Jacques Bard. I'm just going to look on here. I don't want to go with Alan Watts because everybody's not into Zen. Here's another one. Let me do this. The Negro President, Jefferson and the Slave Power. It's about Thomas Jefferson. That's a good one that I like, about how he became president. They actually called him the Negro President. Oddly enough, the reason that they called him the Negro President was because what happened during the South, what happened during that time period was they had the 3/5 rule, and that was slaves were considered 3/5 of a man. So that if you were let's say you were a slave owner, right, and you had 500 slaves, then you got the equivalent of 300 people in your area, in your town. So when they chose, you know, when they did the census, if you had, instead of you had 500 slaves, you were one person with 500 slaves. That was 301 people. So basically, the slave states got much greater representation than the non-slave states. The more slaves that a state had, the greater representation it got based on the census, right? So they called him the Negro President because what they said was because these slave owners had so many Negroes, they got far greater representation. He would have never won otherwise. So that's an interesting book. An interesting book. Let me see. Here we go. Here's one interesting one. Mythologies by Roland Barthes. That's the one in which he talks about politics, viewing politics as as championship wrestling. Here's another one. I'll do one more. Now, here's one. I'll just throw a couple. Descartes' error, right? emotion, reason, and the human brain. How much it talks about, there are those of us who argue that the brain, there's the emotional side of the brain and there's the reasoning side of the brain, and they're separated. Well, they are separated in language. They're separated using words. This talks about, is there a real separation? I mean, think about this. You got to eat, but you don't know what you like. You don't know what you'd want. You don't have emotions. You don't know what would make you feel good. You don't know what you want to eat to be. How could you eat? You might starve to death. It talks about the connection, how you can't really connect. You with Descartes was wrong. That's it. Descartes' error. I'll do one more. Ba, 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 ba. Ba, 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 ba. Let's go with bitten. The secret history of Lyme disease and biological weapons. That tells, let's face it, if you read that, you will come to the conclusion that Lyme disease, which was found in Lymes, Connecticut, 12 miles from a U.S. government biological lab that was experimenting with putting viruses into ticks. 12 miles away was Lymes, Connecticut. And it just mysteriously showed up. So if you read that, you'll be pretty clear. You'll be like, holy crap, Lyme's disease was a bioweapon. At any rate, thanks a lot, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Certainly appreciate that. Share this on all your social media platforms. Thanks, DD London. So I threw a couple of books out there, and, I appreciate the question. I love reading. I love books. It gave me an opportunity to, Jody Brar's father. Here's a book he gave me. Imperialism. Decadent, parasitic, moribund capitalism. Imperialism is the eve of social revolution of the proletariat by Harper Brar. That's interesting. All right. Thanks a lot, you all. Have a great day. Don't forget, share this on all your social media platforms with all of your, with everybody. And, have a great day. Peace. I'm out.